Why should we do that first time round?
Yes.
That's what are we talking about?
Hi guys, you right? Welcome to the podcast. Today we're here with Harrison, and I'll let him sort of talk about himself and what he does, and then we'll just try and ask as many interesting questions as possible. Hope you enjoy it. So Harrison, if you could tell us and tell the people watching about you and sort of, anything that somebody would need to know tuning in.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thank you for having me. My name is Harrison Ward, also known as the Fell Foodie. I appreciate we're down in the south here, so I'll explain. The fells are what we tend to call the hills up north. I live up in Cumbria, so but down south for me, northern down south. Absolutely. So I'm technically called the Fell Foodie, which is basically merging two passions of hiking and cooking. So I'm best known for taking a camping stove up into the mountains where I live and trying to make, I guess, restaurant-style food on a camping stove. So it's a bit quirky, a bit ridiculous, but I enjoy the challenge aspect of it. See what I can create out there rather than pot noodles and beans on toast. But for me, it was an area that I was always brought up in, around sort of Carlisle, just north of the Lake District, but really not really embracing what was on my doorstep at all, not embracing the outdoors that was there, just taking it for granted in a little bit here. I suppose in a way, a bit like maybe you guys down here, some wonderful coastal bits. You've got Dartmoor not too far away as well.
Yeah, it's definitely like that for people down here. Like, obviously you got your hikers and people that love Plymouth for that reason and the moors and going around there. But certainly for me, going up places up country, more like London, Birmingham and stuff like that, you really do, and you hear from people there that just to live by the sea and be surrounded with green hills is just quite magical, really.
Yeah, definitely. I think something you appreciate. Some people's dream to be there, isn't it? If you're brought up in these areas, you get used to, I suppose, that rural side of things as well, and maybe the views you experience all the time. But I guess I'd be more of a tour foodie if I was down here, I guess. But again, it was something that for me, I mean, didn't really embrace it in my younger years and kind of really found myself going through some quite difficult years through my teenage spots and into my early adulthood. And it was really coming out the other side of that was why I sort of discovered the outdoors and started embracing that more to try and get myself back on the straight and narrow.
Yeah, so what kind of came first for you? Like, did you use your passion to sort of get you out of that place, or a combination of the two, or did somebody tell you to sort of use your passion to try and help yourself, or how did you actually start to kind of merge the two of getting better and then using your passion to do the same thing?
Yeah, I suppose I'll start in terms of explaining, I guess, what was going on at that time. Because myself, really, I was growing up with someone childhood-wise and didn't embrace what was on the doorstep so much, but still enjoyed my sports, plenty of friends at school and various bits. But I found myself really sort of almost overnight going through this quite big change and quite, I suppose, through puberty and whatnot, and really changing sort of mentally myself. I went from going this quite happy-go-lucky character to someone that was struggling a lot with sort of self-worth, I guess quite demotivated. Things that I really enjoyed previously weren't giving me that same joy. And it was something that I didn't really want to share with my friends or my family at the time. I didn't want to be that burden to people. I didn't want to bring them down with, my stories of it's when everyone was
cheering. You feel like you've got to tackle that on your own as well, don't you? Yeah. Especially becoming a young adult and going through that. You sort of think, this is just what happens when you go from being a teenager, becoming a young adult and an adult. You sort of like tackle it, and you think the people before you have done it, so you got to be able to get through it.
Well, that was exactly it. Especially when I'm 34 now, and I think at the time, growing up there in the teenage years, the internet was really in its infancy as well. So it was just something we were still on broadband. It was images just about sort of loading up. There's no videos at that time sort of going on those sort of speeds. But again, there wasn't really anyone talking about mental health and stuff at the time either. There was still quite that big blokey culture with the blokes go down the pub, boys don't cry type mantra. So you were trying to look up to maybe role models and things, and just thought, this is suddenly me now. I've got no really what to explain. No sports people, no film stars talking about it. So now I think one of the big benefits, things like this podcast, of course, and other bits going on there, is more people talking a lot more openly about their mental health. And these things don't always have to be big long-term changes either. They can be short-term little bouts, be caused by situational things, or even sort of employment side of things, or even health aspects. For me, it was that moment in my teenage years that was really the start of my sort of lifelong journey now with depression as I know it at that time. And again, it was just something that I really kept to myself. I didn't share with anybody else, and it didn't bring them down that sort of level. and found myself just thinking this was my cross to bear now. This was just what I was going to have to carry forward, and this was just how I felt from now forward. And I worked in the pub quite a lot when I was in my younger years, sort of just getting a bit of Saturday money, I suppose, just washing pots at 13 and waiting on at 15. But at 18, finally working behind the bar. And that was a real eye-opener for me. Not only meeting people from different sort of spaces and different communities, different
I imagine it's quite a thing to go working sort of behind the lines in a place like that, yeah.
Well, again, I mean,
it's its own culture, doesn't it?
I mean, you're obviously quite close to the city around here, but for myself, it was at Carlisle. I was nearby, but I was actually in sort of the countryside as well. So you're very rural upbringing out there. So it was really sort of a gathering of all different walks of life. But it was really that first introduction as well, that British culture of going down the boozer, going down the pub with your mates. That was it. 18 can buy a drink, and I didn't really touch a lot beforehand, but quite quickly found that it was something that was shutting off a lot of those thoughts internally. It was something I quite enjoyed. I liked the social aspect. It was giving that Dutch courage, that social lubricant, just taking a little bit of a sort of ease off things. So it was something I wanted more of, I guess, because it was really shutting off a lot of those thoughts internally. But at the time, again, you're 18, young lad, sort of again quite broad-shouldered, and put a few drinks away. It's quite from the outside, it's nothing unusual. It's just what happens. That's just the culture
like
that
you
goes
say,
in the
you're
path.
just getting into that sort of adult men going to the boozer culture, you know. And I suppose, obviously, you said that it sort of began the decline in your mental health because things that were making you happy and gave you that probably relax and that escape from stuff wasn't making you happy anymore. And I suppose that's then come in, this sort of adult men's boozer culture, and sort of replace that and give you, I don't know, some sort of like that release again, that happiness maybe that you didn't have for a while. So
I think at the time you're still sort of finding yourself a bit, like a sort of young bloke as well. I think you're finding your path going forward, and there's maybe a lot of pressures as well of how maybe you should be, how you should act, how you should follow that same route. And again, that was something that the traditional aspects and the cultural path was definitely one I was getting sucked into. But you look back and try and find a particular moment. That, was there a moment that caused this? Was there a family rupture? Was there something going on in school? But really, I had quite a happy childhood growing up. It was just very much an overnight thing through that change in sort of puberty that then led on to now suffering with this sort of internal monologue, really. So alcohol was providing a little bit of an escape for me initially. So I was drinking out more and more. I was taking on more shifts at the pub alongside my studies. And before long, I was quite drinking. I suppose building my tolerance, started to drink more heavily. And moving away to York for university, I was regularly drinking sort of most days at that time before I moved away to the big city. And that, again, was a big eye-opener for me. And moving away from that little countryside stick suddenly into York, again, not the biggest city of it, not sort of Plymouth down here, but for me, a big jump. All of a sudden, there's places open all hours. I can walk into town, I can get a 9-mile bus. Places aren't shutting 9 o'clock on a Wednesday anymore. And already I'm starting to use alcohol as quite a medicinal sort of tool at this point. I think I'm using it to try and help myself, how I'm thinking internally. But quite quickly, it was starting to become a bit of a poison for me, really.
I suppose the more going on around you, the more that monologue is going to have more things to talk about, and then a bit more alcohol gets involved naturally.
Well, I think it does sort of silence things initially, sort of thing, but then as tolerance sort of builds, it takes a bit more to get to that point of silencing things. And as you go and you're chasing that high in some ways.
Yeah.
And for me, I've always seen it as kind of, we all just want to be happy, really.
Yeah.
That's all we want, and you sort of want to get little dopamine hits from different things, and some people might find that in sort of drugs, I guess, alcohol. People might find that in sex, adrenaline, all various aspects. But they're just wanting that hit to really feel sort of alive and happy. And for me, that was it. It was always jumping myself out. But as tolerance had built, I was really, really drinking heavily to excess each day to reach that bit of a moment that I was feeling content, I suppose. Before shuffling off into oblivion the other side and just passing out and heading home and being absolutely blackout drunk every night. So it was something that, again, but university, once again, that first couple of weeks there, it was all around meeting new people again. It's all booze fueled. It's all about going out and getting bladdered. So it was quite easy to fall into those aspects and really, I suppose, hide.
Did you find it harder, like, that you didn't actually have a reason to feel the way you did? Like, that might make sense. Like, because then in your head you're thinking, why do I feel I've got, I'm in uni, I'm enjoying myself, I'm doing this. Like, was that harder for you to be like, why am I like this?
Definitely my own worst critic, absolutely. Yeah. You're always very self-critical, and you look at other people who've got things a lot harder in life as well, and you're thinking, why do I deserve to feel like this?
Exactly.
There's people around the world who've got far worse things going on than I've got. But you can't stop that, Stu. You can't stop that monologue of not wanting to be here or not wanting to see what your purpose is, or really questioning your real future in life and really looking for the ultimate way out. And so it was one of those that, again, it only pissed you off more, I suppose, when you started having that battle internally with yourself of why you're thinking this way. But again, alcohol just provided that sort of shut off for me and just silenced and kept me here, I suppose, for a while. I was sort of sedating myself, really. I was keeping myself present, for others. I didn't want to be here. I was really the bottom priority of all my listings, and my studies quite quickly fell by the wayside. I took a job back up in a pub in York and was very highly functioning, sort of working my way up the trade. By the end, sort of managing this pub hotel. But at this point, I've ballooned in weight. I was 22 stone at my heaviest. I'd taken up smoking, sort of 2 packs a day, sort of thing. And at my worst, I was drinking in excess of 20 pints a day. I was literally brushing my teeth with the stuff in the morning, coffee cup behind the bar, cracking up with a can in the morning, just starting again. So never sober, just constantly just off we go again. And I dubbed it sort of market research at the time. So if I was working in the booze, I was one side the bar or the other.
Yeah.
The minute I finished, I was off sort of socialising or off into town to the early hours. And it was one of those that I guess I didn't want to be stuck at home in my own four walls, because that was the place that I'd get a bit lost in my head. So I went out under the guise of being social. But I suppose that in itself was adding further problems, drinking this substance that was then causing more issues and becoming that poison.
So at what point was it somebody else, or was it in yourself that you really said, like, this needs to stop, this is like a problem, and something what's bad is going to get even worse?
Yeah, it was quite a while, really. I mean, at first it was something that, again, as I mentioned, it was kind of just a bloke going out, maybe drinking a bit much in his early adulthood. So again,
really, 20 pints apparently.
Well, I mean,
that's amazing, because I'm about 4 and I'm on my arse. So
it was. I mean, I think my 27 was my best day. I remember wearing it as a badge of honour at one point. But looking back, it's really not something why I'm proud of that sort of thing. It was ridiculous, really. But just constantly, I guess, it was only to reach that point, really, that I was shutting up in my head at all times. It wasn't kind of a bravado thing, and I sort of bounced from group to group, I suppose, then. So working in that trade as well, I was easy to maybe hide things somewhat, as opposed to if I was working in an office every day, turning up stinking of booze, bleary-eyed late every morning.
If you smell a booze in a booze,
absolutely,
I've just spilled a bottle or something.
It wasn't going to happen. But it was just something that really, really escalated as things went on. So from the outside, because I was quite nomadic, I was quite solitary. I'd sort of bounce different groups. I'd meet the old boys sort of around lunchtime watching the racing. They'd go all home drunk, and I'd meet the after-work crowd, and they'd all go home for dinner, and then you'd meet sort of the evening crowd, the student crowd. The next minute, it's walking out the last club at 4 a.m. And when I lived in the pub at one point, which again was really sort of kidding the sweet shop, again, it was just, if I hadn't reached that certain point of actually shutting off, then it was just a case of just topping up on the top shelf, and that's it, knocking yourself out for sleep every night. It was just, I mean, really, it was an unsustainable life going further forward. But I didn't see any problem at the time for me. I just saw someone that could handle my drink again. That sort of doing things for me. I wasn't hurting anybody else around me.
It takes a bit more to get to that point, so I'm having a bit more sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, the numbers aren't important either. Obviously, I've mentioned this, but it's not a case of unless I'm drinking that amount, there's a problem. Someone could be having 1 or 2 drinks a night, and it causing a problem to things in their life. Therefore, it's a problem.
Yeah,
it's very much an individual thing. It could just be a glass of wine every night. Some people lean on that as a little bit of a relaxing or stress bit, or need that to sort of have a rough day, pour myself a glass or have a beer.
Yeah,
and again, that's fine. But if it's causing an issue to the relationships around you, and finances a bit like mine was, and my employment and stuff, then that's maybe a bigger issue ahead. But it wasn't really noticed much on the outside, I suppose. I was definitely known for being a big drinker, but the extent of my drinking was quite hidden for quite a while. And I had a moment sort of around my 21st birthday where I had a lot of friends came to visit me in the city. And one by one, I suppose, they started to go home back to where they lived, respective places in the country. And I think it really, really dawned on me how actually quite alone I was in this city. Really. Although, very social job, you're quite front of house. York's quite a big village in the centre too, so you become known as a bit of a face on those sort of areas. But really, I was just sort of bouncing bar to bar. I mean, my best friends were probably bartenders and takeaway owners, really. The signs were there, but... And I think when they sort of started to go home, it really... it really just dawned on me, really, this sort of cycle I was on and how alone I actually was in this city. And, I didn't have a phone at the time. I was very reclusive. I didn't like to be bothered. I was just going about my own business, how I felt was the right way to keep me sane and present. But in the early hours of walking home one day, I picked up a payphone and I called home to my mum. It was sort of 3, 4 in the morning. And I don't recall too much of the conversation because I was absolutely out of it. But my only intention on the call was to say goodbye. I felt like I couldn't go on any further. I felt alcohol wasn't providing that escape anymore. And there wasn't really any other outlet for me heading forward. And obviously, so it didn't happen at the time, but I did come back to Cumbria at that moment and sought some medical support. I suppose spoke for the first time what I was going through. But if I was honest, I was quite annoyed with myself. I'd sort of let people in. I wasn't ready to let people in. It was a bit of a chink in the armour somewhat. And I was quite pissed off with myself. And I very quickly booked a train back to York. Shooed sort of all this help that was trying to come my way, and just went exactly back to the method I was using all that time. And it was another 4 years until really things began to change. I found myself in a relationship, something that I really wanted at the time, sharing life with somebody else and creating memories and experiences. But I was already in a relationship with the booze. I was literally, the two weren't going hand in hand. I worked quite in sociable hours. She was more 9 to 5. So I'd weave in this sort of lifestyle of getting my quota. I dubbed it, sort of this elixir drink I was using to try and get that sort of ethereal, floaty head sort of feeling. And weaving it in. And of course, that was causing various arguments, causing various problems in the relationship. And every time I'd just go straight back out and drink on it. I wouldn't face those on. And, I wasn't an aggressive person. I wasn't verbally or physically aggressive, but I was someone that definitely shied away from maybe these problems coming away and wasn't really accepting that maybe that burden of not wanting to be that burden. I was now starting to cause that pain to those close around me. I had some friends give me ultimatums. I was quite unreliable and maybe making a bit of a show of myself at various places. They were kind of like, listen, mate, we don't really want to hang out with you like this over in future. This is my schoolmates and stuff who I'm thankfully still very close to. Relationships sort of on the rocks, family sort of scene. Again, physically, a big change. I put about 7 stone in this city. Drinking alcohol's the first point of call. Anywhere I go, it's the priority. So the signs are there, really. But really, it was one night and one argument. Heading out into town, not facing the music again, and I went out and just got myself absolutely blottoed, and I acted unfaithfully to this partner, and rightly so. It was the end of that relationship, and it was something that for me, it was an action that it's difficult to really comprehend even now, really, of why I did that, because it just felt so out of character for me. And I saw myself as an honest person, I saw myself as a loyal person, yet the way I was acting under the influence and with the drink, putting that ahead of anybody, missing out on big events and family and friends and just constantly putting ahead, the drink was always first, the drink was first. I felt very compromised as an individual. I felt like this wasn't me, almost like a possessive sort of thing, really.
Like it had finally taken away, the drink had finally just got rid of you.
But I couldn't blame the alcohol because I'd done that. I'd done that and I'd caused that hurt. But it was the 6th of June 2016, the end of that relationship. It was also the day that I came to terms with the fact I was an alcoholic. I was just powerless to this substance. It was all I was doing day to day. All my money was on it, various bits. I was finding cash anyway. I was sneaking beers, I guess, in the bar I lived in. I'd blown through a bit of inheritance I was looking to get from a great uncle. Just all to get my next sort of fix to keep myself sort of present here. And the impact now around me, was clear to see. And there's a quote I love about alcohol being a fantastic dissolvent. It's a dissolvent of finances, a dissolvent of relationships, but never a dissolvent of problems. And that was exactly how I was trying to use it at that time. And really things began to change from that moment. So whilst again, at that sort of level of consumption, it's very advisable to sort of seek medical help, and something that I found out afterwards at this moment. But for me, coming to that terms, I threw my last pack of cigarettes in the bin and quite quickly decided that I could no longer live in this city in York. I'd been there 7 years at this point. I'd worked in the same establishment for 5 years, but literally overnight I up and left. So this moment had happened, and everything felt like it had just fell beneath me. All my foundations had just crumbled. It was kind of ingrained in my person, and that's who I was. I was known as a big drinker, someone who'd go out, sociable, and feeling that way, the fact that this is a problem now, I'm going to have to leave this behind or try and leave this behind. Felt like you were almost pressing reset in some ways. Reset on who I was, who I believed, how I'd explain myself to people. And suppose being in a different city as well, you get the chance to start again and
Yeah.
re-establish sort of a
Who
new
you
life
are,
there.
like,
And literally, I'd been there 7 years. I didn't say goodbye to anybody. I just up and left and came back to Cumbria. So I left my job. I'd lost my girlfriend. I left my flat and came back to Cumbria. And that really was the first point in my life that I suppose I came clean to really friends and family about what I'd been struggling with for what at this point was about 12 years in silence.
So did you feel like you had to get away from York to get away from all your problems? Is that what you felt like you had to get away?
It was less so the city, but I think it was more the familiarity, the routine, and my career then, I'm management in a pub at that point, a pub hotel. I mean, day to day I'm there, I'm doing all hours, I'm living above the pub, like it's always surrounding. And I think I was quite aware from the start that trying to get sober in that environment, or even in that city where I'm known for that sort of activity, was going to be very difficult. There's going to be a lot of further pressures. But I suppose really, I mean, I'm talking quite clear-headed now in terms of how I was thinking about this. But at the time, I'm all over the place. I'm literally...
It's like you said, you'd built your life around it.
Yeah.
So it's what people knew you for. You, above the pub, in the pub, always around it. So you'd literally built it as like the pivot of your life was getting alcohol.
Yeah.
So
I suppose there's also maybe a safety in coming home as well. I suppose you're lucky to have that.
Yeah.
Sort of the family home with my mum sort of there and stuff going home. And again, there was a bit of you heading back to a safe space to rebuild. It was a personal rehab in some ways, I suppose.
So in a way, I can kind of understand and relate because like I had an issue with betting and I found to completely stop myself betting, I like had to leave everything that reminded me of betting. So I stopped playing football and I broke up with my girlfriend and I went home. So I felt like home with my mum was a safe space to just like get away from everything. So I can kind of understand that viewpoint in a way because like I said, I wasn't clear-headed. I was just like, I need to stop. I need to get away from absolutely everything.
For anything's really like big or small problems, isn't it? If you go home, you've got people around you that love you, and that's like a luxury that at least I've got, you've got, and you've had.
Well, it's exactly you've touched upon that. It is a privilege, absolutely, because not everyone has that, of course, and that for me was a big thing. That moment where I shared for the first time online, it was my personal Facebook page at the time. I put on there I'd left York, the reasons I'd left York, and really feeling, I guess, so vulnerable at what had gone on at the time, but also feeling very guilty of the actions the hurt I'd caused to my partner at the time. So I think I was just putting my hands up and being sort of accountable. Look, this is me. I'm apologising. I'm going to try and make this right. And again, another quote I really loved was one that said, "The best apology was changed behaviour." So for me, straight away, alcohol just filled my days constantly. If it was work, whether it was play, that was it. The minute that first drink of the day went down, that was all I was doing for that day. So leaving that behind almost overnight was leaving a massive void in my life of what was going on. I wasn't working for the initial sort of couple of weeks at first when I first went back, but I tried to throw myself into fitness as a means of trying to replace and sort of plug that gap in a way. I was seeking a lot of medical support at the time too. I went to the doctors. We had a family doctor at the time. But the support from friends and family was huge at that moment. That initial moment of sharing it online, that was a really empowering moment, and one that I really feel grateful for now. And the reason I'm able to talk about this is because of that support I had. That again, I appreciate that was a privilege as well, still having those people around. But there are always fantastic, helplines around, the support groups to reach out, medical professionals. You're never alone in these things. So do seek that help out if you are going through these things. But for me, fitness was a big thing I was trying to throw myself into. So again, at this time, of course, I couldn't run a bath. I literally, most exercise I did was walking pub to pub, up the stairs to floor 2 to let someone in the letting side. It was just literally nothing I was doing at all. Very overweight, again. But trying to throw myself in via the gym, I was getting my old bike back out of the shed, doing old loop that I used to do from school. And then a friend of mine basically turned up on my doorstep because I'm back at home with my mum, so he knows where I am. And says, "Right, today, mate, we're going to go on a hike." I said, "You what?" I knew the Lake District. It was there. It was, I knew it was a beautiful place. Like maybe Dartmoor down here, but I never went up the hills. I maybe went for coffee and cake in a nice little town nearby, but I wasn't going up there. What do you want to go up to come down again for? And literally, I was like, okay, right, in for a penny, in for a pound, just trying to really make this change. And I put on what I had to hand, which was an old pair of
sort of saying yes to opportunities.
Well, that's it. I think you just allowing these doors and having walking through these doors. There was a lot of trust in that sort of path and trust in the journey, but making the decisions to enable that, I suppose, as well.
Be open to.
It was, especially if they were showing you support and showing you help in that side of things too. But, I mean, this was a very cloudy sort of mentally time, I must admit, though. Obviously, I'm going through the withdrawal from the alcohol side of things. I'd left the cigarettes again, so my head's pounding. I'm pining for that. I'm, heartbroken with the relationship going. My whole life's just sort of my city. Financially, I'm all over the place. It really was an absolute rock bottom moment for me. And I put on my hand to hands and said, a pair of scabby trainers, a pair of swimming shorts I put on, I think, at the time, and a jumper I had that I'd wear down the pub on a Friday. And my mate looked at me and said, "We can't go hiking like that, pal. I mean, look at the state of you. So I haven't got anything else. What do you want me to do?" And I wasn't driving at the time either. I was always over the limit, so I didn't pass my driving in New York. You didn't need a car there either, I suppose. But he drove us into the Lake District and he pulled up at this outdoor store. He said, "What size shoe are you?" I said, "I'm a 12. Grabbed these boots off the shelf, plunked them on the counter, and they bought me these boots. It was a real show of sort of support and faith from that friend, really. 20 minutes later, he pulls off a mountain called Blencathra. It's one of the bigger mountains in the Lake District. And I'm staring up at this massive mountain thinking, what the hell have I got myself in for here? That moment of faith and support before I'm thinking, what the hell is this? And basically, I was frog marched up this mountainside. I mean, there was no sort of taking selfies on the way up one. I didn't have any Strava back then, sort of checking how fast I got up the hillside. It was just staring at my feet, blowing out my arse, heading up this hillside. And eventually reaching the top. I mean, it was over 800 metres, this mountain. And, we get into the top, this sort of summit circle on the top there. And my friend, barely have a chance to take a breath. He goes, "Right, next week, we're doing Helvellyn." Now, Helvellyn is the third highest mountain in the Lake District.
I've
950 metres. The mountains in sort of Scotland, they classify them as Munros. This would be classified as a Munro if it was over the border. So, in terms of UK goes, it's one of our mountains. And again, the similar tale again. Turn up at this mountain. I'm looking up. It was on the Filmere side, the Filmere Reservoir, and it's basically a stone staircase straight to the top. Like it's not just a little sort of gentle amble up there. And it was just that was it. One foot from the other. It was a really glorious red hot June day, blue sky sort of thing. You're just heading up this hill, constantly just off we go, up, keep pushing forward. And it really did feel a bit like it feels a bit looking back now, I suppose, poetic in various bits. But from what I was going through at the time, it really felt like it was that uphill struggle, trying to sort of push on through that pain barrier, get out of this mire, this sort of rock bottom moment I was in, and having to have that sort of faith and encouragement to push on.
Do you think
to
it
get
was
to the
good
top of that mountain?
that you, like you said, you obviously in your head saw it as an uphill struggle? Do you think it was good to literally kind of physically have that in front of you, rather than trying to sort of climb out in your head? You were literally able to physically climb something. Do you think that was like a really big help? Because some people just, like you say, you live in your four walls, and if you don't get out and you're just in your head, and there is nowhere to go. Whereas I think if you can focus on what's in front of you, like a real physical thing that's real, it's not like you're fighting a hill in your head. You're literally tackling a hill in real life. I think that's like a really interesting thing that maybe, I don't know, might have helped you more than you think, looking back on it.
Yeah, well, I suppose you always break these things down, can't you? Just sort of
After the
bits.
fact,
If you do go for a run, sometimes you're like, right, I'm going to make it to that next lamppost before I have a break. I'm going to make it to that next junction of the road. And I suppose with the hill, I mean, you could increase the gradient. You do a small hill first, and do a slightly bigger one, and a bigger one in bits there. But I suppose again, I was lucky to have that on my doorstep. Somebody else, wouldn't have the mountains as close, sort of thing. But there's always things to find. There's always beautiful green space in this country, whether it's the woodland, whether it's down the coastal bits. Whether it's just going to the gym, getting the headphones in, getting in the zone. I felt like quite an 80s sort of movie montage I was going through at the time, I suppose. Blasting out the Rocky IV theme tune, or a bit of Bonnie Tyler on the go there, just trying to get myself on this path and just keep making progress. And that was a big thing too, I suppose. I felt very self-conscious sort of at first, going out there very overweight and, struggling, couldn't run very far, and things, couldn't get the hill very fast, breathing really heavily. But it was really dawning on me a lot the fact that, I was doing a lot more than the person would be if I was sat at home on the sofa. So every step was progress. And I think it was just trying to break those little chapters and break those steps into that and those hurdles to sort of overcome. And of course, this is ongoing with my sobriety. I mean, each day I'm trying to get myself to midnight each day, just making sure I can get another day sober under my belt. And it's all going on at the same time. But with that support from friends, from family, from medical help, I found myself seeking some sort of substance abuse counselling at the time. I later went on to sort of group therapy that I didn't realise at the time, but it ended up being AA. The bits in there. So I was told that, there's some group therapy you can go to now. I walked in the room and all of a sudden everyone sat on all the chairs in a circle going, my name's Tom and I'm an alcoholic. And I'm going, am I in this room now? It was something that, but I mean, that was its own thing. I mean, for me, I didn't fully identify with that sort of movement. There was avenues, sort of religious aspects and things to it, but I really enjoyed the fact it was very like-minded people that could understand what you were talking about and what you went through to get your next fix, or the way you'd seek out alcohol, the way you'd put it ahead of everything. That was a really valuable thing, having people that were going through a similar thing to bounce off. But I was sort of going on my own path in a way. I was utilising this fitness path. I was doing a lot of journaling at the time as well. That was something I'd laughed you at the pub at one point and they said, get a little book and start writing down your thoughts. I was going, well, what's that going to do? Yeah. But I found that really, really quite therapeutic for myself, really. And I take myself off to a little coffee shop and stuff, still getting out my own four walls and just sitting there and just sitting with a book and writing down perhaps, my achievements for the day or what I'd done or, what I'd lifted in the gym this time, how far I'd be able to run today. And you look back on that and it was just constantly, getting stronger, getting faster, going further, losing weight. For those that are watching the video, I'll come to it in a bit. It's gone a bit the opposite way last year or so. But again, these things, they're not a linear journey. These things, they very much they do. Exactly. So you have the battles that come. Life can have some pretty shit moments as time goes on. So I think for me, this isn't something that was cured overnight or left. Whilst I may be, I was over 9 years sober this year, so I'm into my 10th for the next year. I know. Thank you, man. I mean, it's bonkers. Not a drop since that day, 2016. Not picked up the cigarettes again. But there's some moments that really can really rock you in those bits. And I think that the depression side of things, that's not something that's just gone away for me. Yeah, of course. There are moments where I still have those struggles and go through, but I think it's learning perhaps how to manage those a bit, having to cope those slightly better. Yeah.
Like
and not
say,
falling upon those more negative vices sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean the temptation's definitely there. I mean I think, like lockdown now, do you? Oh, for sure. I mean less so. It's not like an everyday thing going on. I want to fix
stops you is it the thought of all the things that have happened that you don't want that to happen again?
I think definitely, because sometimes I think, well, I may be going to go, why can't you just have one?
No.
And I go, well, maybe I could now. I've got a very different mindset. I'm not drinking this on the same aspect of what I'm doing. But I look at what I've gained since, and it's just not worth the risk for me. But you also then think of those around you that have helped you and the support, and you're not just letting yourself down, you're letting everybody down who sort of come on that side of things.
See, for me, for betting, I had a conversation with my other half the other day, and I said, there's no way I could do one, because I know in my head I could go, it's just one a week, but then it's slowly you creep back into your old routine, and I just know that I couldn't do just one. I think I'm 2 years. I was 2 years in June.
Amazing.
And I haven't I literally one day was like, that's it, I'm not doing it ever again. I haven't done a bet. I mean, it's hard actually, because I'm on a foot like on a Wednesday. All my mates talk about it. Like I think one of them won like 400 quid last week. And I was like thinking, fuck, I'd love to win that. Or like my brother does it. And like sometimes he'll do it sat next to me, and I think, do you have to? Because and you see it all over the TV. Like it's just, like you probably think the same with alcohol. Like you didn't realise how many adverts there were on TV about, like even like Netflix now, they've got adverts, and every advert's about betting or football betting. And I couldn't do just if you said to me, there's one, no, I couldn't do it.
Yeah, really hard with that association there, because again, for me, it was similar with the alcohol side of things. That for me, I knew I was giving alcohol up, but I wasn't giving my life up. Quite quickly, I didn't want it to be a taboo, so I didn't want to be someone that was crossing the road every time I walked past a pub, or going down the wrong aisle at the supermarket. And very early on for me, I went on a stag do, one of my good mates' stag do's.
Oh wow!
And there was a lot of people going, you shouldn't go on this stag do, maybe you shouldn't go out, give it a break. I was about 3 months into my sobriety at the time. I think, it's one of my best mates. I'm not going to miss this moment in his life, sort of thing. And it was difficult, of course. There was temptation there. I guess there were some of his mates that I'd met before who don't know the background, and they're sort of offering you drinks. And the temptation's there, isn't it? I think a lot. In the back of your head, you're thinking, maybe I could just, who would know, and I could just have this drink. But it was one that I think was also facing that head on in certain. I know not everybody would want to do that sort of thing, but for me, I knew it was going to come up again. Weddings, funerals, parties, alcohol's going to be there, but it's very much keeping my side of the street clean. I mean, for yourself, you must find that a lot as well. I mean, like in your sport and things, it's difficult to sort of that association thing.
I find it hard still now, for the first couple of weeks after, like I said, I stopped betting. I stopped playing football. I stopped like anything that associated. Like I used to do, like, cause I used to like play goal, or like play football up on the goals. So I used to get there early to put a bet on. I used to like, so I stopped all that, and then over like gradually, I started introducing things again, like playing football, whatever. But no, yeah, I still find it hard now. Like I go through phases. Like I said to my partner today, I said I really have got the urge to put one on. But like it's weird because if you gave me a scratch card, it doesn't interest me because I know that you're going to lose. Whereas with a bet, it's 50-50. You could win, you might not. But no, yeah, I find still to this day, I find betting a hard thing to be around because, like I said, they were talking about it last week, and I was literally sat there thinking, "Well, I'd love to put one on, just one, but I know I couldn't just do."
They only tell you the winnings, though, don't they? They never say the big losses.
No, I hear about that as well. But so for you, like, do you do like the 0% alcohol, or do you do nothing?
So I don't mind the 0% beers and things like that. I found myself okay on those, but I think it's very much a personal thing in there.
Was that something you've done like gradually, not something you've?
I mean, quite maybe, yeah. Again, I think that stag do. I was drinking sort of a 0% beer. I wasn't replacing. It wasn't a case of right, all of a sudden I'm going to be drinking the same amount of these every day. And it was maybe just a couple. And to be honest, I sort of took it or left it a bit, really. You know, people around you sometimes were very sort of fearful, I suppose, of not drinking around you, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I remember my mum used to go, "Yeah, do you mind if I have a glass of wine?" I say, "Well,
That's exactly.
do you mind if I have a Mars bar?"
Like
it didn't matter. Like it was just
That's exactly what happened to me. Like they always talk about it, and I'll joke say, "Oh, I'll put one on." They say, "No, you can't." But yeah, they always.
Yeah.
When I first came out about it and said like I'm struggling with this, like one of my mates like actually does like the tips and stuff. He's like, "Why didn't you come to me? I would have won you loads of money." I thought, well, you could tell me that like a couple of months ago when I was in the shit. But yeah, no, I can't get anywhere near it.
Yeah, there's a friend of mine, Dan Bateman, he's got a podcast that talks quite openly about it, and he's up in Carlisle, and he's both sober and former gambling addict sort of thing. So he loves his football, and he found that really at first it was it was the big joy around sport that was almost tainted because it was like wherever you went, it was it was the booze culture around it, the gambling culture within it. It took him a long time to get back into actually enjoying the sport he loved, which he's grand on doing now, but. That association is very difficult sometimes. So again, for me, because of the social aspect of it, it was always going to be there. So that was a big sort of hurdle for me to cross. So the 0% beers I'm absolutely fine by. I don't mind sort of them, even sort of 0.5, which again, something that's usually classified as low alcohol in this country. But the constant is classed as alcohol-free. But 0.5% is the same as a glass of orange juice. Same as a vinegar. So literally, you're already taking in that amount of alcohol. It's not something that's going to be that's it, send you off the rails with that amount.
Yeah.
But for me, I found that sometimes you get alcohol-free spirits now, you get alcohol-free wines. I find they give me a little bit of a placebo effect. I kind of get a little bit. They don't taste like what the spirits and wines do, but I get to that little feeling again, that little itch. I used to say it's a bit like when Popeye had his spinach and he's all like.
Weird, like.
So I just avoid those. Really. It's too close.
When when you're a kid, it's like a joke, isn't it? That you have a J2O and you've seen your parents drinking from these glass bottles, and you have a J2O, and you're going to be feeling it at a year 6 disco or something. It's like that, I imagine, sort of thing.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, in the associations to most perhaps. I mean, it's just the sugar in those, I suppose, isn't it? I can as well sometimes. But I think, I don't know about you in sort of that side of things too, but I find out. I think the whole addictive nature sort of thing has been proved as incorrect these days. But for me, I've certainly got that sort of mentality on things where, I think when I picked it up, I struggle with moderation generally. I think, food's a huge passion. I'm sure we'll come on to that in just a second, but it's a huge passion of mine, sort of the cooking aspect these days and that sort of, bringing things together and that creativity. But I struggle with the moderation as well, sort of thing. So it could be like a pack of biscuits on the table. I struggle to sort of stop and just have a couple. It's just all on off it all the time. I found that with fitness at one point I was the same, with booze. So that's a very difficult thing where alcohol I could leave behind. Whereas food's a bit more of a balance, I think. And I think in recent years, with some bad news of my personal life, I have been leaning on food a bit more, perhaps as that cushion or that comfort eating, which again has maybe led to a bit of a weight gain again. But I think sometimes that's a much more positive outlet than what drinking would do again. It's very tempting to drink again because it's just like passing fast forward on life, I think, or pressing pause sometimes, having that brief moment of getting away from what's going on. But I always think that, I'd have that moment and escape the crap times, but not drinking means I'm far more present for the good times. So again, that risk factor, it'd be a quick win on that side of things, but what I'd lose by doing so, it's just not worth it at all.
See, because I find when we went to the gym, that was my main aim to like get over the whole gambler thing. But I got so like addicted to the gym that I got to a point where I'm looking the best I've ever looked. I've lost all this weight. You know, we used to go and like go on the scales, go, what are you this week? And I was, what was the heaviest? Like 75 kilos. And I'm thinking, I've lost so much weight. I'm looking the best, but I'm still looking at myself and I don't like how I look. I think I still look fat. And I got to myself, so I got such like to a point where I thought, I've got to stop this because I'm going to kill myself just like looking at like. So then I just started just eating food. Now I just eat food all the time. I can't. I've tried going to the gym, but like I said, like a bit like you, I'm all or nothing. If I go to the gym, I'll do it until I fall out of love with it.
It's interesting that sort of like that, almost like body dysmorphia you're sort of talking about there a bit, aren't you? Because that's something that you definitely hear a lot more from women sort of in talking about more openly about, you know, judging themselves all the time in the mirror and checking things and calorie counting, checking the scales. But as blokes, it's definitely a thing we have as well. I definitely find that even when I was in the best shape I was in, you were still looking going, maybe you wanted to be bigger or certain bits, you wanted a bigger muscle.
I have fit time. Like I'll look and I'll go, I'm not eating, I'm looking slim now. And then you eat and you look at yourself and it's completely different. I think that is a constant thing, especially when you care as well.
Yeah.
So like, if you're caring and you're working towards something.
In reality, what does it matter? Like you're not defined by that. It's more about your health and how you're feeling internally, isn't it? But
you just gotta like accept that that's a thing, and then you can go, oh yeah, you know, I'm gonna think I look shit, but then remember yesterday I thought I looked really good, and nothing's changed overnight sleeping. You know, so like I think that's just something that like I take along with what I like doing, if that makes sense. It's like I don't know, it's just something that you have when you do that, I suppose, when you care. Yeah, but so
I think our problem was we're both same height, same build, but whereas I could eat a Mars bar and I'll put on half a stone, whereas he eats like 3,000 calories a day and he's probably lost half a pound or half a stone, whatever. So like we were going together and he's trying to build muscle or build like mass. So I'm trying to lose mass, and then like I said, I'll have a Mars bar. I go, fuck's sake, I put on like half a pound here, and he's eating all he should all week, and he goes, I can't put anything on. And so us two are probably the worst people to go to the gym with each other, because like I said, I want to be him and he wants to be me. So, but like
it's always perspective, isn't it? But that's it. Often what you're feeling is the worst part for yourself. Someone else is looking at you in the gym thinking, I wish I had that. Someone else is going, I wish I could do that. Sort of thing. So it's always flipping that perspective sometimes, isn't it? I think that's a big thing that. There is a lot of talk about sort of that positive mindset approach, and whilst not going all woo-woo and being sort of just think positively on everything. Like there are moments that are pretty crap, but you can often look at both sides and take something and either try and weigh it up as an experience to move on from, or take something that's really going to drag you down further. And again, there's a cartoon I always picture from that. There's like two people sat on a bus, and it's a bit like the Lake District or around Dartmoor sort of thing. It's got a lake though, so a bit more like the Lake District. And, one person's looking out one window. And they're looking really sad and upset, and they're looking at this dark cliff edge, really dark skies, and they're looking really down. Whereas the other person's looking out the other window, and it's a really blue sky day. There's a lake below, a fantastic view. And it's all just about how you look at things. Sometimes I think you can choose how you react in that situation at various bits.
You've got to take things as they come and sort of positively spin stuff. And I think when I was listening to you say earlier. Obviously about your alcohol, and then even Rhys with his gambling. I think when you get to a point where you think that, you have to be your best to accept yourself, I think maybe sometimes when you've accepted yourself at your worst, I think that's maybe why you're able to like get out of these positions. Like if you're at rock bottom, you kind of have nothing to do but accept yourself as you are. I think maybe you finally, all of those thoughts in your head saying you're this, you're that, you're not good enough, and all those bad thoughts have finally become a thing, and maybe you can go, right, so what I was telling myself is not a thing. You accept it and you sort of, the only way's up sort of thing maybe. But it's like accepting, kind of just finally, obviously accepting your problem, but like maybe accepting your problems, kind of accepting yourself at the same time. And that's how you can sort of, I don't know, start getting rid of those things that you don't like.
And there's got to be a contentment, I suppose, to yourself throughout these things. And I think you've got to cut yourself some slack when you're going through these times as well, because you have to really look at the little wins you're adding up to. Again, it's zooming in, it's zooming out on the picture, you're seeing the progress over time rather than going, oh, I've not done much this week, I've not gone much faster this week. If you go back out and look where you started, you'll see that progression massively. So I think the contentment's a big thing as part of that for sure. But I think also it can be just that real sort of progress pattern. I think for myself, it was just something that didn't seem another option. Hitting that sort of rock bottom, not everyone hits that point. And some people do hit that rock bottom and don't bounce back up. And that's some of the hardest things. I feel very lucky in the fact that I had that moment. I was 25 when I had that moment as well. When I was going sort of AA at one point, there was people in that room that, were in their 60s, 70s, and only recently got sober, and they were thinking, they wasted a lot of their life and various bits out there, which, of course, they haven't. They've got, there's always chances to sort of rebuild and have those changes. But for me, there was sort of a luckiness towards that, but facing that fact that not everyone goes through this path. You can't pull people out of this mire sometimes if they don't want to be pulled out of that mire.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing. So me hitting rock bottom, I had two ways I could go. It was either trying to rebuild from there, or it was just shuffling off this mortal coil and really heading the way I wanted to initially. And again, whilst there was, an accountability to other people, I felt that was a big thing that was keeping me here in the first place was, the love I had from family and friends sort of thing. It wasn't leaving them behind. I felt the guilt of that. But when that support was coming as well, as we said before, that accountability can come in sometimes. And I always encourage people to talk about their problems, I think, and talk quite openly. I don't think necessarily it has to be going public. I went quite public with mine sort of thing. Later on I set up my Instagram page, sort of Fell Foodie, I started sharing on there my journey, which wasn't only friends and family now this was into the public ether. But I think it's something that you should always, lean on somebody and speak what you're going through. Again, as before, we talked about medical professionals, check out the helplines there, finding someone to share these stories with, because that's ultimately, that accountability can really help draw that line in the sand. This is where I am now, try and move on from that point and try and make change. But it was not always overnight either. It's not always, again, 0 to 60. Again, you might have really maybe slimmed down and tried to really wean yourself off at one point in the best. It might be the same with the alcohol side of things. But perhaps, the cold turkey way sometimes as well can just, that all or nothing mentality, I think it can sometimes be, you find that just leaving it behind can be the best way to go.
Yeah.
So how did you find the whole food, like chefing kind of, I've been waiting to talk about the food side. So how did you find that? Was that something you just you've always liked cooking, or was that just?
Yeah, I'm self-taught, so I always call myself a cook rather than a chef, because I feel like I'm not trained, so I feel like it's not fair to say I'm a chef. But I think growing up, I just really liked the fact that food brought people together. It felt like memories of seeing my family or various bits. It was just that gathering around the table. Food was there. It was my grand Sunday dinner sort of thing. And it was just really fond memories of those times. And I began reading sort of a lot of cookbooks as a child, sort of thing. I suppose I wasn't reading, Harry Potter's or things. I'd read cookbooks, and I was watching a lot of the cooking shows on telly. And I loved the fact that you were seeing, in Italy, they're all in the street dealing with the neighbours under the sunshine, and how they were, growing the food, where it was coming from, the ingredients from around the world, mixing those, discovering, experimenting, that creativity, I suppose. And I basically just began sort of trying to cook at home a little bit. I was cooking my gran when I was quite young. I was the oldest of 7 cousins, so I guess I was the one getting put to work earliest, I suppose, peeling the spuds or stirring the gravy. But again, fell in love with that aspect of it and wanted to learn more and more. But again, growing up sort of in North England, sort of on the border, it was something that you were seeing a lot of, like maybe Jamie Oliver talking about certain recipes on the telly. And I'd go to my local supermarket and I couldn't find half of these ingredients because they hadn't made it there yet. So you couldn't always achieve the sort of levels of cuisine globally, whereas now we've got such a repertoire of global cuisine all over the country now. And I just love that aspect. And it was something that I suppose when my drinking time started, it did fall by the wayside somewhat. Because I was working in those environments, I was always front of house. I had spells sort of in the kitchen. I was mainly covering for absence and things. But I was able to sort of, work alongside chefs and pick their brains really and go, how have you done that? What goes into that sort of thing? And learning, listening a lot really. Just being able to take in that
by natural intrigue.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. And then there was times that I was helping. I was the prep chef a couple of days, and then I'd be the sous chef helping them out when they were short. And when I got into management, of course, that was, if someone turned in sick, then all of a sudden it was going, right, I'm in the kitchen then, sort of thing. So it was just learning as you go, but again, having that natural intrigue and that passion for it, I suppose, took you a long way. But I will say, cooking in the commercial kitchens is an absolutely different thing to home cooking and various things like that. It's almost like factory work in a way, like the skill set and the able to just knock things out at that precision, the same. That's timings. I mean, it's a real art in that way. But I think sometimes even those who are cooking, the love at home, slowly cooking something, gathering. It's not to say one cooks better food. It's just different methods of doing one thing. But it was something that, I was probably picking up a few chips in the kitchen when I was my drinking days, or falling in the kebab shop at 3, 4 a.m. So I wasn't having a high coloured experience there, despite the fact I was probably serving that kind of food in where I was working. But when I came sort of sober, the other side of things, as well as sort of leaving alcohol behind and trying to throw myself into fitness, I was really looking about how I was fueling myself as well, because if I'm trying to do all this work and try and make this change, but I'm eating loads of shit or I'm eating loads of sugar, then I'm going to feel pretty crap. Yeah. And again, that equation,
all that effort's going to go.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious, isn't it? And for yourselves, the minute you just don't exercise and you drink a lot one night or you eat loads of fast food, you don't feel great the next morning. Yeah. No. And it's always the same. You never have one go, I feel great today. Like it's always, you always get the negative spike down. So I was trying to fuel myself properly, and I was eating and enjoying cooking from scratch again, because I suppose I had lots of time as well. In fact, I wasn't drinking, 10 hours every day. I had a lot of time on my hands. So I enjoyed that aspect. I found myself working in a cafe quite quickly in the Lake District. A friend of mine worked there, so I got a job there, and that was something that was still that hospitality background, but it hadn't got as much of the alcohol culture because it was shutting at 5. But later on, I ended up getting a 9-to-5 office job as an e-commerce manager, sort of doing all the website stuff. So it was a very different routine, but I was keeping my oar in certain patterns. And when the hiking started, it was more about how I was taking little packed lunches to enjoy when I was on the hillside, to enjoy when I was out and about. So that's, I suppose, when the Fell Foodie aspect really started, because I was kind of merging that passion of food and now the walking out and about. So at first it would just be pasta pots I'd made and bits out there, or a nice little salad I'd made to put in the top, or some leftovers the night before. And someone passed me on the hilltop once and said, oh, that looks nice. He got his soggy sandwich out of his bag that was all smushed in his backpack. And he said, oh, you should have brought a stove and cooked for all of us up here. And I thought, you know what? I will. So I bought a stove, and I had no equipment at the time. I didn't have the walk. I didn't, I had no equipment when I started. I was just taking pots and pans from the kitchen at home and doing it. Just seeing if I could create things. I just found it quite a mindful experience cooking, bringing something together and appreciating the love you put into a dish to then enjoy it afterwards. I know some people find it just tedious. They're just going,
it's
I
like
can't be bothered.
Gratification straight away, isn't it?
And knowing what's in it as well. Your fresh veg, fresh meats in there, you have persuasion and bits, and just building those levels of flavour and learning that sort of skill. I just enjoyed that aspect. And whilst I was loving being on the hillside, that was giving me that real dopamine hit, that endorphin rush, getting to the top, and that aspect of almost feeling like I was succeeding at a challenge without that negative slope that a pint glass would have given me. There was that little bit of a high, but there was always a bit of a long slow demise afterwards. So picking those two together, it just seemed to something that I wasn't able to just sit and look at the horizon and just be like zen and be like, oh, shit, I'm just tranquil, I'm just enjoying the hill. I was always kind of busy and wanted to do or get there quickly or getting your phone out or something. So actually getting the stove out and doing bits and cooking something was keeping me busy on the top, and it meant I could look forward to a nice meal on the hillside, nice warm meal. And if you had friends there as well, it just felt really quite human.
Like you say, going back to that feeling of everyone gathering around one thing, like your trophy, isn't it? Having a good meal.
But even when you look back to sort of, I guess, even like cavemen and that sort of thing, it was like cooking outdoors, it was like under the stars, you're talking. Really... Cooking is I think something that around that pan, around the stove, it's a very thing that you do naturally find conversation just flows quite
like you say,
easily.
It's been there since the beginning of time, sort of like you go out, hunt, catch something, and everyone's sat around eating it.
It is. I don't know if it's that non-direct eye contact a little bit as well. Like walking was like that. Sometimes if you sit in a car with somebody, you find it easier to share your deepest, darkest feelings because you're not staring them in the eyes like an interview, are you? So I found that was quite a nice thing. And it just sort of evolved from there. So it began to snowball a bit online. And then my second year sober, I decided to share for the first time now on this social media account I'd started, which had gained a modest following, I think, a couple of thousand.
Was this just started as like the food and hiking?
Yeah, that's what it was. I didn't put my name on it. There wasn't any pictures of me. I was just showing the views I was experiencing on the hillside. It was proper sort of Instagram filters at the time, a bit out there. Or the food I was cooking at home, or sometimes in little Tupperware pots. And that evolved into, I was taking bloody ceramic plates and all sorts of with me when I first started. But these days, much more lightweight, more purpose-fit gear. And and shared that story, what I'd gone through, the fact I was 2 years sober, I'd lost 7 stone at that point. I'd hiked all the, done the 3 peaks and various bits. I'd ran a marathon, which again, I couldn't run down the street when I was in York, sort of thing. So it was a real moment of change in a year, what had gone on. And the fact that, the hills were now my home, I was living in that area, was just such a life change for me. What was possible in that year with that support of other people. And it just really sort of took off a little bit. Sort of, I get some local news wanted to cover the story a little bit, some local papers. It led on to some, national outdoor magazines wanted to cover the story. And this random guy was cooking nice meals in the hills. I don't see that very often. It's usually a pot noodle or a tin of beans sort of thing. And it just naturally sort of evolved into then, the following gained a little bit more, and then led on to sort of doing more sort of national publications and newspapers and even a bit of television. It was just something that was never ever an aim for me at the start. But I guess just being honest and just being perhaps authentic and just doing something I loved.
Well, and inspiring, it is inspiring,
Well, thank you. It's but that's what it was stemming from. It was just that love of food, and I think from that moment onwards, I guess I mentioned sort of the caveman, sort of ancestral homage in a way. But I'm not lighting any fires out and about or anything. It's all sort of camp stuff. There's a responsible avenue to it as well. It was kind of if I was going to these beautiful areas that had given me so much sort of healing and hope in my own life. It wasn't wanting to ruin that for the next person. So everything was coming back down the hill with me. I was always leaving no trace. I wasn't washing anything in the rivers. I wasn't lighting any fires and leaving scorch marks or barbecues. It was all elevated stoves. And that was really important too, I think, respecting that environment too. And that perhaps sometimes when you've grown up in an area becomes a bit second nature to you anyway, shutting the gates behind you in the farmer's field.
You're taking care of home.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that education side is really important, particularly when these days I'm lucky to have built a platform with various bits out there, but there's now an avenue of influence you maybe have that sharing the right message is also important as well. So that's always been a bit of a mantra and motto for myself moving forward. But these days, it's just a case of I was lucky to put my debut book together last year. So I had 85 recipes all designed around a single burning camping stove that was published and was, Waterstones around the country and Amazon and things. It was a real childhood dream to write a cookbook, and doing it in my own sort of quirky way was fantastic.
How does it feel though? This is all come just from you just thinking, I'm just going to put this online. Like, it's such a weird experience, isn't it? Like, you've just thought, I'm just going to put how I feel online and my story. So then, you've now got a book and you've been on TV and you got all this just because you thought one day, I'm going to put this online.
Well, the butterfly effect, crazy, isn't it? Really, it's it could have been very. I mean, I didn't even have Instagram before I started. Never used it. Yeah. There was a colleague at work. I used to take pictures of him. I was one of the people who took pictures of the dinner. Yeah, I'd come into work and I'd be like, "Wait, I made this last night." And he'd go, "Oh yeah, yes." Well, you need to get Instagram and stop showing me these pictures. So I did, and it ended up being the reason why I left that job 5 years later. Bless her at that sort of point. But it was, there was no intentions behind it. I think sometimes that's organic things, maybe are good that way. You only force things so much, I think. Yeah. Whilst, yes, you should follow your dreams and really strive to get those next levels, there's certainly points of luck along the way in various bits. I mean, I didn't set out to do this, maybe meeting the right people and having the right opportunities come in, but also embracing, as back to saying that yes at the time as well. It was just kind of going, oh, well, I'll go and meet that person, see what happens, or I'll say yes to that. If
you never said yes to going on that hike or whatever, you never.
Exactly. All of those spots. But I think sometimes that sort of serendipity in there and sort of passing that on and not expecting anything in return either, I think. And that was what a lot of people did for me. It's how I sort of take things forward as well. You just sometimes do things and go, well, that's, so doesn't have to be reciprocal all the time.
It's that movie with Jim Carrey. It's called Yes Man.
Oh, Yes Man, yeah.
It's like that, isn't it? Where he thinks, I've got to say yes to everything and all these good things start happening. But then he goes to the convention.
It's funny.
It wasn't supposed to be you say yes to everything. You were supposed to, it's about being open to saying yes to everything. But it's sort of like that.
Exactly.
Isn't it,
you have to weigh the things up because you could say yes to a ridiculous or stupid. Yeah. You could say yes to a pint again or yes to a gambling slip. So there is obviously a bone of contention. I think it was a book originally, was it a Danny Wallace book? I think that before the film. But that sort of mantra, I think, of allowing the opportunity to be there. And I always had this sort of trust the journey sort of path and just letting sometimes some things are out of your control. Some people's actions you can't control. You can't always be like getting annoyed because someone's done something that you might not be the way you do something, but you can't control that. So
can't control what happens and what people do, but you can control how you react to it.
Which is why I think it was always about keeping my side of the street clean in a way. It wasn't a case of I'm selfish. No one else is going to be let in. But in terms of like the drinking or the gambling or whatever aspects people may have, it was just about no, I'm not compromising that. If I felt uncomfortable in a situation, I didn't apologise for it. I'd just go or excuse myself because that was something that was a non-compromisable thing for me to move forward from, and it's still something now. I think at this point, whilst I've mentioned a few times, very lucky with the friends I've got and the family I've had, a lot of close school relationships still, people I've met in the outdoors and stuff since, but none of them are people that go, oh yeah, go on, well just have one.
Yeah.
They're very respectful of that sort of aspect, that bit I've chosen. And again, if they turned around to me one day and said, no, I'm going to give up drinking now, I'm going to give up certain foods, then I'd support that as well. So I think it's sometimes choosing your network as well. There were people along the way that perhaps I've lost along the way as well, but looking back, were they friends really, or were they just acquaintances that were doing the same thing I was doing at the time? And that can be quite difficult, I suppose, of really resetting. Whilst I know not everybody can just go, right, that's it, I'm leaving where I am, just leaving it all behind and cutting all the strings. But I knew for me that I couldn't stay in that job, for one. I mean, I remember chefs each time they used to try and stop smoking. It was the only time they'd get a break out the kitchen and go and get, a bit of fresh air, in inverted commas, to go and smoke a cigarette around the corner. The only reason I sort of took it up, really. But by that high sort of stress environment, it was really difficult to sort of already be in that environment and then quit something like that when you're feeling anarchy and you're wanting it, and it's out there too. The peer pressure aspects of the drinking side too, you're in that realm. It was like, if we didn't drink, it was seen as unusual. Yeah. But looking back perhaps on everyone that was already in that environment, they were drinking maybe a bit too much perhaps as well. So you're in a circle of people who are all maybe in the same sort of path. And you'd see a couple of them come in with the Friday gang, you'd only see on the Friday.
Yeah. Exactly.
They'd have 2 beers and they go home.
Spinning the roulette wheel for people, you know what I mean?
But they always felt like, they look really in control. They just come in, they have the set, they go home. And again, something might have a flutter. They say, I do a little bit on the horses, and like once a year, Grand National. That's it. And some people just can, but when you know yourself that perhaps that leads to a slippery slope, and if you hang around people who are all on that same path, you're only really escalating that further, I think. So you sometimes do have to pull out and remove from those scenarios. And again, don't apologise for those actions if it's protecting yourself sometimes.
Do you ever look back and just think, is that all a dream? Because sometimes I think back to a couple of years ago, I just can't believe some of the things I did. Like I just find, I thought, no, that can't be true. Like when people come to me now and say, oh, do you remember me? I just shake my embarrassment. I didn't do that. But there's just, I look back sometimes and most of it I blanked out. Most of it, like people will try and remind me of things. I go, did I? Okay.
I suppose didn't feel like it's the same person.
Yeah, I feel like that was not me acting out. That was just me. That was somebody in control of something. Because like I said, my mum will remind me of things often, just to try and embarrass me in front of people, and I just say that didn't happen. Didn't happen. I blanked it out. But do you ever find that, or do you just look back on it and be like, I'm glad that happened because it turned me into this kind of person?
I suppose one of the beauties of the drinking to excess in those levels, when it does get a bit hazy at times in terms of the memories, but it did feel like looking back. It does feel like looking back at a stranger sometimes. You feel
like when you come onto these, you talk about yourself, think, did I do that?
Oh, honestly, I mean, at one point I didn't go back to York until about maybe even a year sober. I sort of left that as quite a big thing heading back there for the first time, especially the way I left and sort of thing. Because at first, there was a few strained relationships, even my employer and stuff. Of course, I just left them in the lurch. I just went. As the manager, I just left, and I didn't work a notice or anything, which is not, again, my sort of etiquette normally. But I think the situation-wise, they were rightly quite pissed off at the time. But I think as time went on, perhaps, and seeing, what had changed, and the fact that they could see the fact, well, that was a necessary move for me.
Yeah.
And there was acceptance in that. So really, it was very welcome back. I went back, and a lot of nice relationships there and stuff that rekindled. But I did retrace my steps quite a lot when I was there. I sort of followed the same route and went to the same bar strip, I used to go. I used to go to certain bars, certain points, and I wandered around. I just had a Coke in them or just a zero beer. And a lot of it, I was just bored. Yeah. I was going like, how did I just stand here for like 6 hours every night, just stood here, drinking? Like I was like, I just couldn't see that life anymore. It was just very different. And I went to York feeling as if it was going to be a big moment for me in terms of, feeling perhaps, a lot of memories there, a lot of bits, but it actually felt quite distant in a way. It still felt as if, it was a chapter in my life, but it didn't feel like home anymore. It felt as if that was it. It was just a chapter that had gone.
So
I think
closed that door and
Yeah.
just opened it again to have a peek. And
But as you come to that, these things aren't, they're not like, they're not chapters I've torn out and set on the fire and forgotten them altogether. I think they've all made to where you are, sort of thing. And I think we all go through these patterns where you make decisions that you may change if you wanted to, but I don't see them as sort of regrets in certain ways, because I think ultimately they've led to where you are now. In certain bits. Whilst of course, I'd rather change the hurt I caused to other people and things in there. And some of those actions, there might be decisions I'd make that would have left me in a far better place, but I can't change those again. I haven't got any control to change that, so I have to accept what it is. I've tried to right the wrongs. I've tried to, gain those sort of apologies. And if things that didn't come, they have, thankfully, and that's sort of happened for me. But if they don't come for people, you have to some point to accept that was not going to come and move forward, draw that line, and write the new chapter ahead.
They're all what make you like who you are, isn't it? So everyone's doing their own, sort of the best they can in their sort of journey. So shouldn't like regret or wish that things didn't happen, like you said, for your reasons, like that you've hurt people or done these things to affect other people, but can't want them, think that they should never exist, because they should. They're what make you who you are and like where you are today. So
well, I'm sure all of us could look financially at one point thinking, we could have spent that money a bit better in certain ways. Whether it was drinking, whether it was gambling, whether it was just a big purchase or a holiday. You look back and think, oh, well, if I put those shares in Apple instead 10 years ago, I'm in a different place. But there's no point, is there? There's no point in looking at those. You can only control what you do tomorrow, and I think that's the biggest part of what I take forward, is that one day at a time approach. Yeah,
I definitely loved hearing about how you sort of just started, and I think like for me, especially like what I'm passionate about, which is obviously like the fitness and gym and stuff like that, I've always thought that no problem, like overthinking doesn't get solved by overthinking. I think for like people in general, a real physical change, whether it's like you said, just saying yes to going on a hike, or just starting going to the gym, or just going for a walk when you come home from work or something, just anything that you can like physically do in that moment that's going to instantly make you feel like you're doing something better, or you're improving yourself, or you're working towards something like that. Doing something physical is like one of the best things to improve your mental state, I think.
100%.
At least, for me, the way I sort of view it.
And looking at it for others too, I know you mentioned before we started recording the fact that obviously you'd helped your children around and sort of dragged them to the gym for a difficult period. Of course, I had that same path with someone taking on that path there. And I think, particularly as blokes, I think we can cut ourselves off sometimes and just sort of shut out and try and grind it out and go through there and just keep working at it and really not facing perhaps the issues. Feelings if we're going to be weak or vulnerable by talking about these things, which is ridiculous. I mean, if anything, one of the stronger things you can do is reach out and go, I need some help, I need some support. Whether that's in a work setting, whether that's personal, relationship-wise. I think it's why there are some great sort of help groups these days that just sort of free drop-in things that are just, blokes bonding just as they would do before. Again, perhaps it may have been in the pub at one point, down the football, but some people maybe choose not to do this because of the temptation and things. But ultimately, I think sometimes if you see someone that's going through these bits, and you're maybe someone that's in a maybe more structured pattern, or you've got something that really helps you, just saying, right, come on, have you tried this?
Yeah, like I did for Rhys. Well, it kind of happened, and then
an unexpected living return.
I said, I know what this is, the kind of stability and the positive that it gives me. So I was like, I've always been like that. I want people to sort of get in on anything good that's going on for me. And I said to Rhys, I was like, just if you want to come gym, we can talk about it. You don't have to sit and talk about it. Like, come gym, I'll show you the ropes there and just do it like that. And then at first he said no. And at first he said, cheers, mate, sort of thing. And I thought, you give it a bit of time. And because everyone sort of does that at their pace before they, accept that they want to do something. And then he messaged me one day and he said, is that offer still on the table, mate? And I said, yeah, always is. And then obviously we went from there, didn't we?
And I went to the gym and I got a £60 parking fine because we were in the gym for over 2 hours.
It's mad, isn't it? It's like, you just sort of go, like you said, somebody sort of reaching out their hand and being lucky enough to have and surrounded by people that really want to help you and
Yeah.
really do care. So that's like, you know, another thing.
I
It's
love that
just-
sort of finding your tribe thing as well. So
Yeah.
the fact that sometimes, especially now as adults, we're really scared of being like the beginner. I think as a
Yeah.
kid, you just dive into things. You're not
Yeah.
bothered about judgment and stuff. But as an adult, you're like,
I feel like
I'd
you got to
really
be
like
good
to
enough
try
before
something.
you even start.
You know, I'd really like to,
Yeah.
I don't know, try surfing or
Yeah,
go
like a new
boxing.
job or something.
But yeah, new job. You're just really scared to make that first step, which is ridiculous. But in all these things, you'll always find your tribe in certain patterns. Like the gym might not be for everyone in there to go, no, I not fancy that. But they might want to join a running club, or they might want to go
Yeah.
hiking, they might want to go and do Pilates class or something in there. But there's always something, and you'll find that circle of like-minded people in there. And even if they're just there to sort of help you get through that particular moment,
Yeah,
that's a really important
like
thing. And
Rhys said,
it's-
you know, the gym's not like a thing that we still do now together, but it definitely was like I said, it was that first sort of thing, doing something and sort of making a positive change outwards, and then you get that internal positive like feeling as well. So just doing something, you know, say yes to something one time like you did, and Rhys did, just like trying to do something and just try and move forward.
Yeah.
Like you said, you just got to try and do something positive and just try and take what's happened and then try and make something out of it and move forward and be positive.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, I'm absolutely with you there. I think any of that physical activity, and if you can bring the outdoors into that as well. I mean, even if it's just you know going on a lunch break walk from your work,
It's a very
or
human thing,
sit-
being
exactly.
outside, isn't it?
sit and
like,
take your lunch on a bench somewhere. Or you take your dog out
Retuning
and you've got it.
into nature is really quite therapeutic, isn't it?
It doesn't have to be a marathon or a mountain sort of thing. It could just be a walk around the block, you know, after your
Yeah.
dinner or various bits out there. Just making that on a regular. Keep turning up, and those things will really add up.
Yeah, well, yeah, thank you so much for talking to us. And
Yeah, perfect.
obviously, you know, it's never going to be easy talking about that stuff, even years on. So I really appreciate you talking about it and going into depth like you did, and obviously sharing about your story now. And it's, well, it's the first time I've heard about it. Obviously, Rhys knows about it.
Yeah.
It's the first time for me hearing it, and it's really inspirational to me. And I hope that it continues and you keep talking to more people and more people latch on, because I think when people can tell and get inspired by something, and I think that's probably why it kicked off as quick as it did, you know, because people do latch on to things when they get like a certain feeling or something about stuff, and so they sort of can build on what you're doing as well. But yeah, it was really nice to sit here and listen to it, and you know, I'm taking something away from it myself. So, and Rhys probably is, you know, talking about.
Well, it's nice to sit and listen, and kind of, even though yours was alcohol, it's nice to listen and be like, yeah, I can relate to you on so many different things, because like, you know, like some of your decision making is something I did, and like you can't even explain why you.
It's
acted
like you
that
did
way,
things differently at certain points.
But it's nice to sit here and listen to someone's story. It's completely different to mine, but I can relate to so many different aspects to it. You know, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for having. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah,
No, thank you both as well.
We'll obviously link you in, like, you know, descriptions and stuff like that, and you know, share you with as many people as possible. But yeah, thank you so much, and we'll call it there, guys. So hope you did the same thing as us, listened to the story and got something from it, whatever that is, and hopefully you've been inspired like we have. And yeah, we'll see you in the next one. So thank you so much for watching.
Why should we do that first time round?
Yes.
That's what I'm talking about. Let's do it.